There's an Eddie up there, I think, too. So I'm going to stick with you.
Yeah, thanks. Good. We're live here at the corner of Forbes and Grant, where Michael Rosfeld, there's a crowd gathering after Michael Rosfeld was found not guilty tonight by the jury in his trial. After about 3.5 hours of deliberation, Rosfeld had faced the possibility of being found not guilty, which he was, or a first-degree murder charge, a third-degree murder charge, or voluntary manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter. So there were 5 options, and he was found not guilty on all counts. And so this crowd is here expressing their displeasure with that verdict.
With me.
I have to say that the numbers here are, significantly smaller than what we saw over the summer after the actual shooting. It's a little surprising that this road is not blocked off. We saw all the blockades leading up to the trial, and now what's going on is there's people standing in the street here, and then these cars are basically being forced to turn around. So it seemed like this was it had seemed like this was taken care of by police. I mean, they talked a lot about the preparations and planning. And then now you have the situation where people are, blocking the road and cars are turning around. So this is sort of a little bit of a repeat of what we saw over the summer. Now this black Jeep here, has its 4-way flashers on. This car has decided to do a U-turn. And then we have these other cars that are kind of sitting here. So I don't know if they're here intentionally or if they're stuck or what's going on with these vehicles here. And then you have about maybe 100 people on the corner of Forbes and Grant. So if you're just catching up, the jury began deliberations at 4:40 p.m. this evening, and then they had a verdict by about this is one of those kind of ugly situations that took place over the summer where people are protesting. They don't want the car to come through. Look at this, and then you're having the car wants to get through. People aren't letting it, and this individual is upset.
Don't be that guy.
Look at these cameras, man.
The bus a U-turn.
Stop.
Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. There's more than enough from the bus a U-turn. Turn it around.
Back up.
What's that? So this is one of those kind of ugly situations that we saw over the summer where people are blocking the road and then a car is here. So there's some dissension among protesters here. People upset with the verdict. One guy is saying let people through, some people are saying not to do it.
Yes, but I don't have a mic.
So we're seeing some familiar faces here, people who had protested after the actual shooting itself. There's a few, familiar faces here, people who are recognizable. Yes. All right, I'm gonna get ready to do a. Can you take a step back for me? Just one second. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, hey Janelle, yeah, we're here at this corner where there was a little bit of a disruption here. We had an SUV that was trying to come down the road here, come down Forbes, and basically off to my right here, people were blocking that SUV at one point. That SUV has now been let through, but it was sort of a throwback to what we saw over the summer after the shooting of Antwon Rose after the traffic stop. in terms of how protesters were blocking the street. Eventually, though, there was sort of some dissension among protesters, among people who were upset with the verdict, and that SUV was eventually let through. But for a moment there, it looked like a quite dangerous situation as people had their hands right up on the bumper of that vehicle. Now you see there's a Prius here in the middle of the road. It looks like it's trying to do a U-turn. I'm not sure if they're doing that intentionally to block the road or if they're trapped or what they're trying to do there. But in any case, Forbes is basically no-go right now if you're trying to come through here. Otherwise, it's pretty calm out here. You have people on the corner who are, basically chanting and expressing their extreme, in some cases, displeasure with this verdict. Not guilty for Michael Rosfeld. But look off to my left here, and this almost looks like a normal night here on Grant and Forbes downtown. So you have the media parking lot over there. And so now you have actually some folks on the move here, splitting off into different sort of groups here, walking away, and it's unclear if the continued expression of displeasure will go on, or if that is stopping at this point. But for the moment here, it looks like people actually are beginning to disperse. You can take a look, over my shoulder here, and there's a group over there on that corner right there. So we know that the jury took about 3.5 hours. People gathered on the steps of the courthouse after that verdict. And then a group came out and started chanting, and they sort of walked around from Ross Street here to Grant and Forbes. And then this is the area where they are now. So we'll check back in with you in a short time. For now, reporting live downtown, Beau Berman, Pittsburgh's Action News 4.
Bit of an exaggeration. We need to get this.
They want any stuff that's on that where we were coming down the stairs.
Oh, that ledge there?
Yeah, everyone's to crap out of there.
Okay. Where's Andy?
Not sure.
Oh, there they are now.
All right, so we have a group over here.
Did they give any indication on to stay here and then leave and float around?
They just they're saying something about getting stuff from inside or something. Does anyone have stuff inside still?
They're not letting us inside.
I think Louis talked to.
They are?
Yeah. I don't know. Louis has the. All right, so if you're still watching this live video here, we're on the corner of Forbes and Grant, and you saw I did a live report for TV there, and I'm going to jump in on these interviews that are happening here.
There are 203 of us in the State House. There are 203 of us who are watching this verdict right now, who saw justice not take place here. What is their reaction going to be to this? Because that's what the people of these communities want to know. That's what these people here came to see. They knew what was going to happen today at this courtroom. What they want to know is what's going to happen tomorrow. So the people who have power, the people who, whether you are in the legislature or you are in a borough council or you are in a police force, what are you going to do to counteract the culture of police brutality that we have in this country? So it's not just a legislator. Also, what are our police officers going to do? What are police departments going to do? What are they going to do to ensure that bad cops, because they like to say that, right, that there are bad cops. But what are they going to do to call out a bad cop, make sure that bad cop doesn't work anymore, and get them off of our streets? That's what I challenge them to do. If cops are not anti-black, then I say, if you know of any single person who wears a uniform who is anti-black, any person who wears a uniform who has biases against black and brown people, any cop who has had a misconduct that is an abuse of power, then you get rid of them. And if you're not willing to call them out, then we are. But we're going to keep fighting here until you call them out, and if you can't call them out, then we'll fight against it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's what I need too. We joined in late.
My name is Summer. Okay. I'm going to say something. Just S-M-M-E-R. L.
Yeah, I was keeping up with
They were saying something sure should be that way, that way. I wonder if they were setting up something else or.
Sorry.
So you heard there from yeah.
She sent a text out.
Okay. All right, so things are pretty calm here right now here on this corner. This is obviously there were many different opinions on how this verdict should come out. A lot of people felt all along that Michael Rosfeld should be found not guilty, didn't do anything wrong. A lot of people felt that he should be found guilty. And this is the faction of people, part of them who largely felt that he should have been found guilty of one of the charges. So, but this crowd has largely dispersed. You sort of get the sense that that this is kind of de-escalating here. Crowd is dispersing, and you see some police officers across the street though. They're here at Forbes and Grant. And then we have some people here who've been chanting, but by and large, nothing outstanding happening here at the moment.
Why aren't we marching? Why are we not marching? Why are we not marching for Antwon Rose? Why are we not marching? Let's keep going forward. Come on, what was his name? Antwon Rose II. That's right. Why are we not still marching? Let's march forward and peacefully march down the street. What was his name? Come on. Let's march.
Are any of us following that?
Let's march. Why is no one else moving forward on this? March.
All right, so you can see there's not a whole lot of activity here now. There's, I guess you would say, some solemn faces here. People who who said they're upset with the verdict. Now back up at the corner of Ross and Forbes, you can see there's some police SUVs here, police, motorcycles, law enforcement. But the courthouse was very quickly closed down, shut down after the verdict came out. So we were up on the third floor. The folks who were in the courtroom were let out. People who were in the overflow room watching on a video monitor, then they were let out. And then, there was only one door at that point open, being used to enter or exit. And people spilled out onto Ross Street first, and then turned around the corner of Forbes and Ross, and then down to Forbes and Grant, and that's where there's a group of people right now. Ross Street is open right now. There was a assault truck there as a barrier a short time ago. That's now been moved, so that's a change there. And then now the only people left here gathering are down at the corner of Forbes and Grant. So I am hearing basically some rumors at this point that some protests could be happening in other parts of the city tonight. But that's unconfirmed right now. As for right now, things have really calmed down. Not that they were ever incredibly heated, but you may have seen we did some programming. Did some programming there. On TV. We're going to be back on at 11 o'clock on TV. Can I give this to you?
Yeah, thank you.
So in the corner here, this is sort of the scene right now of what's left over. We heard from Summer Lee. The representative Summer Lee spoke and shared her opinion. She is displeased with the verdict. and then there's a small crowd here now. I mean, almost a third of the people here now are media, actually, at this point. Yeah, probably about a third, if not half, of the people here. Yeah, let's do that.
I think right now, it's just headed with grief. He's overseas. He's out of town.
Okay. I've been curious about that. Anything else you want to add? Okay, thank you.
Can we get your initial reaction real quick to the verdict?
Hey. Sure. Shock, sadness, like many in the community. There was absolutely no reason that this man should not be in prison right now. He took a young man's life unnecessarily, and I had no expectation that Joy would come back this quickly with a verdict.
Fast.
Way too fast. This should not be the case.
Was it emotional for you when you heard not guilty?
It is. I have a young black boy at home, 5 years old, that unfortunately, in the eyes of many law enforcement, is viewed as a threat, no matter what the circumstance, even when you're running away from the situation. And for many, it reinforces that we have to have very hard conversations in our community about how we're perceived, and that shouldn't be the case.
Does it feel any different being a politician, being in city government, and watching this from that perspective versus that of, maybe before when you weren't, if you saw something like this?
No, it just reminds me of the way I look. It carries a certain stain in this country.
Thank you.
Thanks.
As City Councilman Daniel Lavelle. Do we have a mic in there?
So our city has sustained to me forever that we cannot recover, and nationally, I don't know how we fix this, because continue every day when black lives are killed by blue on black. With footage, they seem to still walk away not guilty. We do have an issue, as we do know, there's two sides when it's black on black, but folks who are employed and taking an oath to protect and serve are taking their lives so quickly. And once again, I feel for this mother and his father and his family, because when you lose a child, it's not the natural order of how things should go. This city has to change. This city cannot be the most livable city and grow to the city I know it could be, to collectively embrace racism, sexism, classism, and all the other issues that exist. That's all I have to say. Again, to the family of Antwon Rose, my prayers as Reverend Glenn Garrett Grayson, the pastor of Bussy Center and ED of the Center of Cares, who serve over 200 young people every day, bleeds and go with you and yours.
Reverend, can you say and spell your name, please, for
Reverend Glenn Garrett Grayson, Glenn Garrett, Garratt, Grayson, Grayson, pastor of Wesley Center and Zion Church, and a community leader in the Hill District.
All right, Brittany has that. Brittany and Steve have that. That was Reverend Grayson, a religious leader from a religious leader of the Hill District, speaking about the verdict and his displeasure. We also, before that, heard from City Councilman Daniel Lavelle about that, about his feeling on the verdict. And so right now, not a lot of people left here who had watched, in the courtroom. In terms of members of the public, it's now almost mostly media here.
We worry like everybody else, and we want the cops to go home safe, but we want our children to come home safe.
Absolutely.
We need that.
Absolutely.
And we've been dealing with this for decades.
Yes, sir.
So the pain that you feel today is the pain that we felt for decades. But no one wants to understand that. They want to think we just out here, we just protesting and protesting. We're not doing that. What we're doing is saying that we want life for our children. We want everything. And when we ain't right, let humanity make us right, because there's only one race, and that's our race, the human race. If we don't begin to take care of all,
Outrage.
when does it start? When does it start? You've seen this nationwide. You've seen it everywhere. Yeah, it hurts.
And the trial was rigged. It should have been Allegheny County residents who heard that trial. My name is Randall Taylor. I lived at Penn Plaza. You victimized the black community at Penn Plaza. You're victimizing us again. And I'm telling you, we're tired of this. How long we got to live with this? Why did it have to be Dauphin County, which is not the same, because that's Trump country. That is not the same as Allegheny. We should have been able to decide that. And I'm saying this was fixed. It was rigged, so we would get the verdict that we got today. Outrageous. That man did not follow police procedure. He was supposed to empty that car. He did not follow police procedure. He was supposed to wait until backup came. He acted in a reckless manner. And that means that should be involuntary manslaughter at the very least. This was rigged from the beginning.
That's crazy.
Started with people like Jeffrey Manning. It was rigged from the beginning, and we have this result. We are outraged. Our people are hurting. From our seniors to our young, people are hurting behind this verdict. To watch that boy get shot 3 times in the back and to have the officer lie and say, oh, I seen him turn around. We've seen the video. We should be talking about perjury now.
Big facts.
So I'm just saying again,
big facts.
The black folks tonight are hurt, we're outraged, and it ain't going to continue like this in Pittsburgh. Y'all must be crazy if you think we're going to continue to live like this.
Can't do it.
Randall, the trial was less than a week. The verdict came after less than 4 hours.
I mean, that's another thing. Why was he speeding up the trial? Who ever heard of a trial? I sat on a jury. Who ever heard of a trial on Saturday? And he even said he was going to talk about the fact that when they meet on Sunday, what was the rush? Have you ever heard about anything like this? What's going on here? I'm saying it was rigged. I'm saying Pittsburgh does not have the ability to deal justice to our police officers. And as Representative Gainey said, of course we want our police officers to go home safe, but we want our children to go home safe. All we're asking these officers to do is do what you are trained to do. That's all. And if that man had done what he was trained to do, Antwon Rose would be alive now. It was a shame how they criminalized that boy. It's a shame how they criminalized him.
That worked out.
Thank you, Randall.
I'm running for city council. I ain't here for that. I'm here to stand with our folks.
You heard there from that man Randall Taylor expressing his displeasure with the verdict and bringing up some various points that are on his mind. Hey there. We heard from the Reverend Grayson before that, and City Councilman Lavelle before that. Of course, we know that there are a big number of people out there who are pleased with this verdict. People had expressed that they wanted to see the Officer Rosfeld acquitted. So you have obviously split emotions and feelings on this here tonight. Some people pleased and feeling like justice was served, and others feeling the exact opposite, which is important to remember here in all of this. We happen to, be right outside the courthouse where people showed up in large numbers who wanted the opposite result out of this, wanted a different verdict. But of course, there are people out there, people at home, people who aren't here right now who may be very happy and very satisfied with this verdict that has come down of not guilty for Officer Rosfeld. But, the people that we have who are gathered here, right here outside of the courthouse, who decided to show up and decided to be here, it appears so far, all those who've spoken out are displeased with the verdict. And so it's things of, there was some chanting initially and some shouting, some marching, some walking, but at this point, things have calmed down. And you have a small amount of members of the public here, and then you have media like myself, and that is the extent of it at this moment here. So once again, I mentioned that there is a rumor that there could be some protests happening, people protesting this verdict in other parts of the city, and it remains to be seen if that's going to happen. If that's true, that's an unconfirmed situation at this point. But I've now heard that from multiple people that that could be the case, and I'm not sure where that would take place or occur, but that is something that could happen. So you can see there's a number of police officers here across the street. This is the Grant Street parking lot here. One thing we didn't see was the families of the Rose family and Rose's mother, Michelle Kenny, or Michael Rosfeld's family after this verdict. At least I didn't, and I don't believe other members of the media did either see them leaving the courthouse or anything like that. We saw them. I saw Rose's mother walk into the courtroom before the verdict was read, but I did not see her coming out. And it's my understanding, my thoughts, that the security in there basically got families out through a different exit and did so first, before the members of the media were aware of that or whatnot. So. So now you have a scene here that's really not a scene. You have a few people gathered here in the corner, and that's the extent of it at this moment. So police had made a lot of plans, preparations. The night's not over yet, of course, but for all intents and purposes, right now it's a very things are calm, and there's no protest currently, no riot here downtown, which there was really no rioting over the summer either in terms of property damage or something like that. There was, of course, the extensive protests in many different locations, but generally peaceful, aside from blocking the roads, of course, which created tons of controversy, which we're well aware of at this point. But here tonight, we're besides the chanting and shouting and sort of battle cries from people displeased with the verdict that happened on this corner, it's cleared out. It's cleared out. So once again, Forbes or Grant rather is completely open now. Traffic is flowing through. Forbes was briefly blocked off by some cars, very, very short period of time, and some of those cars did U-turns to get through, and people were standing in the way, and then eventually they just moved out of the way and let people through. And that was a very, very short period of time. So at this point, you have people here just standing and talking together, and there's really not much of a scene whatsoever. So people had sort of talked from... So Michael's asking why no interview from, he writes, from the cop. I assume he means the former officer Rosfeld. We did not see him coming out. We actually didn't see family members of Rosfeld or Rose family coming out. We've obviously seen him. He testified in the courtroom, but it's my understanding that he must have been escorted out through as well as the Rose family, through a different entrance or exit. It was very quick as it all happened, and we were basically, as members of the media, we were sort of blocked into one area of the third floor. At one point, I tried to actually go upstairs to make a phone call in an area where you're allowed to use a phone, and I was disallowed from doing that. So It was very strict, is the point I'm trying to make, in terms of where you were even allowed to stand. And then the rest of the media, we had been on the first floor of the courthouse, and our photographers were ushered, forced to basically go to the Ross Street back side of the courthouse, all to one door. So basically, the point being that if Officer Rosfeld, left through any other exit at all, we would not even see him or know that he was leaving. So we would absolutely love to interview Officer Rosfeld and really everybody involved, family members, to get their perspectives on this huge decision that's come down tonight here in downtown Pittsburgh at the Allegheny County Courthouse, which you're looking at right now. But unfortunately, we don't have the chance to do that at this moment. And so we know there is potentially more to come in civil court in terms of the civil lawsuit that's been filed, and that could have a different result potentially, or it might have the same result very well. So that remains to be seen, and that will come in the coming months and possibly even years. But for the time being, tonight, a historic decision here in the city of Pittsburgh, something that a ton of thousands and thousands of people were waiting to hear how it would come out, and we now know that Michael Rosfeld, the jury out of was it Dauphin County, finding him not guilty. The trial began on Tuesday, so it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then today is Friday, and the jury deliberated for about 3.5 hours. You have court staff members walking out right now at this hour here at 10:12. And District Attorney Stephen Zappala has now issued a statement regarding tonight's verdict. And I'm going to try to pull that up here. I have always believed, this is, I'm reading from a statement of Allegheny County District Attorney Stephen Zappala. I've always believed that the criminal justice system belongs to the people, and the best example of that is when 12 men and women sit in a room and deliberate how best to pass judgment onto one of their peers. Indeed, that is the foundation on which the entire criminal justice system is built. While I respectfully disagree with their verdict, it is the people of this Commonwealth who decide guilty or not guilty, and they have spoken to this matter. In the interest of justice, we must continue to do our job of bringing charges in situations where charges are appropriate, regardless of the role an individual holds in the community. So there's the statement from Stephen Zappala tonight, the district attorney who did file the criminal homicide charge against the former officer Rosfeld back in June. So there you have that statement coming out from the DA. Now there has been criticism among some of the people we just heard from out here, basically saying that they would have liked to see the jury come from Pittsburgh, from the Pittsburgh area, Allegheny County, not from the eastern part of the state where they ultimately came from. So now it's almost like the calm after the storm here, as you had this obviously intense, highly anticipated verdict, and a lot of predictions about what might happen one way or the other, and now we have just sort of a quiet out here.
It kind of says a lot.
All right, as I'm going to go ahead and end this Facebook Live video here Obviously, you saw the verdict tonight, not guilty. Michael Rosfeld found not guilty here after a deliberation of about 3.5 hours on what marks day 4 of the trial. And I'll come back on here if something else develops tonight.